She looked me in the eye one night and said, with a calmness that chilled me, "I like you, but I'm not in love with you." The words hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker, brief, sharp, and impossible to ignore. In that moment, the life I thought I knew cracked down the center. But to understand the weight of her statement, you'd have to know what came before it. When we first met, she was sunlight wrapped in laughter. She had this way of making every crowded room feel like it belonged to just the two of us. I was captivated not only by her smile, but by the sense of possibility she carried, as though being with her meant stepping into a life bigger than my own. And for years, that belief guided me. We built routines, wove ourselves into one another's days. Dinner after work, lazy weekends tangled in blankets, shared glances that spoke louder than words. On the surface, we were the image of compatibility. Yet, as seasons passed, I began to notice hairline fractures in our closeness. She no longer reached for my hand absent-mindedly. Her phone seemed to demand more of her attention than I did. She'd return home later than usual, offering reasons that sounded logical but felt rehearsed. I brushed it aside at first. Every couple drifts, I told myself. Every love story has quiet phases. But then came the silences. Not the comfortable kind that couples grow into, but the strained ones, where words seemed too heavy to lift. I found myself talking into spaces that no longer echoed back. She would sit across from me at dinner, nodding at my stories, her eyes somewhere else entirely. I pretended not to notice, convincing myself she was simply tired, stressed, overworked. Denial was easier than confrontation. Still, doubt is a cruel companion. It whispered to me at night when she turned her back in bed. It sat beside me when her laughter sounded forced. And though I tried to dismiss it, the suspicion coiled tighter each day. Then, that night arrived. We weren't fighting, nor was there any storm leading up to it. The air was still. She set her fork down after dinner, folded her hands neatly, and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Her voice was steady, almost gentle, when she said it. "I like you, but I'm not in love with you." I waited for her to take it back, to smile nervously and say it came out wrong. But the silence after her words told me otherwise. I felt the room tilt, the ground underneath me give way. The life I thought we were building suddenly felt like an elaborate illusion, one I had been too eager to believe. And as I sat there, stunned, one question surged louder than all the others. What changed? At first, I thought I had misheard her. My mind clung desperately to the possibility of misunderstanding, as though misinterpretation would be a mercy. But the way she held my gaze, unflinching, almost clinical, told me the truth was plain. She meant every syllable. A dozen questions stormed through my head. Since when? Why now? Who are you, really? But all I managed to whisper was, "What do you mean?" She exhaled slowly, as if she had practiced this moment. "You're good to me. You always have been. But something's missing. I can't keep pretending it's not." Her words didn't just pierce me, they hollowed me. Everything we had shared, every laugh, every tender glance, was suddenly dragged into question. If she wasn't in love with me now, had she ever been? Or worse, had I been the only one in love all along? In the days that followed, her distance turned from subtle to undeniable. She guarded her phone like a soldier, with a weapon. Conversations grew shorter, stripped of warmth. My attempts to bridge the gap were met with polite smiles that felt like walls. And then, as though fate had decided I'd been left in the dark long enough, the truth clawed its way into daylight. One evening, her phone buzzed across the table while she was in the shower. Normally, I respected her privacy. But curiosity, sharpened by weeks of unease, overpowered me. I glanced at the screen. The message was short, but it detonated inside me. "Can't wait to see you again tonight, Red Heart." My stomach knotted. My hands went cold. I didn't need to scroll further. The heart emoji alone was confession enough. But I did. And with every exchanged message, every whispered plan, every affectionate word never meant for me, the illusion of our life together crumbled. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't cry, didn't even look ashamed. Instead, she met my fury with an unnerving calm. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she said, as though betrayal had a gentle version. "It just happened. It just happened." Those 3 words echoed louder than my own heartbeat. To her, my world collapsing was nothing more than an accident. To me, it was an earthquake tearing apart the foundation of everything I trusted. Rage battled heartbreak inside me. I wanted to shout, to demand explanations that might piece together the wreckage. But all I managed was silence, the kind that shakes more than words ever could. That night, when she left, whether to him or simply to escape me, I sat alone in the quiet, staring at the walls we once painted together. The memories around me mocked me. The photographs, the souvenirs, the life we had curated like a fragile masterpiece. All of it now tainted, all of it a lie. And beneath the grief, beneath the humiliation, one truth seared itself into me. The person I trusted most had chosen someone else. The days after her confession bled together into one long shadow. Time no longer moved in hours or minutes, but in waves of numbness and sudden, stabbing clarity. Some mornings I woke convinced it had all been a nightmare, that she would roll over and laugh at the absurdity of my fears. But the cold emptiness on her side of the bed reminded me otherwise. I stopped eating the way I used to. Meals lost their taste, reduced to mechanical bites swallowed only to silence the growling of my stomach. Nights were worse. Sleep evaded me, slipping further away the more I chased it. At 3 a.m, I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship like a cruel highlight reel. The first kiss, the late-night drives, the promises whispered in the dark. Each memory was now tinged with suspicion, as if hidden within them were signs I had been too blind or too hopeful to see. Isolation became my closest companion. I turned down invitations from friends, silenced phone calls from family. I couldn't bear the pity in their voices or the well-meaning reassurances that I would find someone better. Better? How could I imagine anyone better when the person I had given everything to had already decided I wasn't enough? The silence in the apartment was suffocating. Even the ticking clock seemed to mock me, each second dragging out the question I couldn't silence. Why wasn't I worth fighting for? I tried to fill the void with distractions, movies, endless scrolling, meaningless tasks, but nothing held. No matter where I turned, her absence loomed like a ghost refusing to be exorcised. Guilt gnawed at me too. I asked myself if I had failed her in some invisible way. Was I not attentive enough? Not ambitious enough? Not exciting enough to hold her attention? The blame settled on my shoulders, heavy and relentless, until I could barely stand beneath it. Yet, in the quietest hours, when the despair threatened to consume me whole, another voice whispered from deep within. It wasn't loud, not at first, but it was steady. You are still here. You are still breathing. You are still human. It struck me then that her betrayal, as devastating as it was, did not erase who I was. Her choice revealed her truth, not my worth. I had been faithful, honest, devoted. I had loved with everything I had. That wasn't weakness. It was proof of my capacity to give, to endure, to remain whole even as I bled. The thought was fragile, like a candle flickering against the wind, but it was enough to keep the darkness from swallowing me completely. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but for the first time since her words shattered me, I realized I still had a tomorrow to claim. And in that fragile realization, a seed of defiance began to grow. The morning I decided to stop drowning was not dramatic. There was no lightning bolt, no sudden clarity. Just sunlight filtering through the blinds and the realization that I could either keep living in the wreckage she left behind or start rebuilding. My chest still ached, but I was tired of letting pain dictate the shape of my days. So I began with the smallest step, getting out of bed at a decent hour. The next day, I cooked myself breakfast. Simple victories, yes, but victories nonetheless. Each one reminded me that life still belonged to me, even if she had chosen to walk away. Therapy followed. At first, I resisted, ashamed of admitting how badly I was unraveling. But sitting across from someone who didn't judge, who listened without pity, helped loosen the knots inside me. I poured out the memories, the questions, the guilt. And slowly, the counselor helped me see what I had refused to admit. Her betrayal was not a reflection of my inadequacy. It was a choice she made, independent of my worth. Outside those sessions, I turned to the gym. The weights didn't care if I was heartbroken. The treadmill didn't pause for my grief. And in that relentless impartiality, I found comfort. Each drop of sweat, each ache in my muscles, felt like proof that I was still alive, still capable of progress. My body grew stronger, and with it, so did my spirit. I also revisited passions I had abandoned during our relationship, books that once thrilled me, music I hadn't played in years, hobbies I had shelved in the name of compromise. With every rediscovered joy, I realized how much of myself I had sacrificed trying to keep her happy. That sacrifice had not saved us. But reclaiming those parts of myself was saving me. And somewhere along the way, I stopped checking her social media. I stopped replaying our arguments, stopped imagining scenarios where she stayed. Instead, I began to look forward. The future no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like a canvas. The truth is, betrayal leaves scars. There's no undoing the pain, no pretending it never happened. But scars are not weaknesses. They are reminders of survival. Each one marks the battles we endure and the strength we gain from them. She may have broken the version of me that trusted her blindly, but in doing so, she revealed a deeper strength I never knew I possessed. I learned that love, real love, begins with the self. That no one can strip away my humanity, my resilience, my ability to rise after the fall. One night, months later, I looked in the mirror and saw not a victim but someone who had endured the worst and kept going. The words formed in my mind with quiet certainty. She may not have loved me, but I have learned to love myself, and that is what saved me. And for the first time since that night, the reflection looking back at me smiled.